Hi, and welcome to the AWS Summit Online. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend this next session. We're going to be chatting a little bit about workforce continuity with AWS services. My name is Scott Brown, and I look after a category of services within AWS that we call productivity applications. And we'll be touching on some of those today just to give you a little bit further insight into what they are and how to potentially leverage them within your enterprise, school, or corporate setting. Just a brief agenda. So, again, we'll touch just briefly on the way we're working today and how that's evolving and changing, and many of us are in the midst of that right now. Touch on some AWS solutions for remote employees, students, as well as contact center agents. And then briefly, why AWS for remote work and learning. And then probably the most important piece, the next steps in terms of getting started and how you can potentially take advantage of many of these capabilities today. So as many of us are aware, the way we work has dramatically changed over the course of the past several years. And it's not just with the globalization of the economy, because that's, of course, driven the need to work from anywhere, virtually with anyone at any time on any device. But you can no longer assume that work is a place. And so, work is an activity. It's not necessarily you driving or commuting into work every day and moving into a physical office space or a campus. But it's actually the ability to stay productive, be productive, regardless of where you might be geographically or physically. And then, again, this goes without saying, but organizations and specifically our peers within the realm of IT are increasingly looking for options to make sure that employees have an opportunity to work remotely from home safely, but also in a very highly secure fashion. Just a brief, interlude here. Again, not shocking for anyone. We've all lived through this. But if you think about, the COVID-19 challenge that we went through and are continuously going through at this point in time, this really highlighted the need for, businesses around the world, organizations around the world to have, the ability to live, work, and communicate in a setting that is dissimilar to what they might be used to. So essentially, whether that means you're a contact center agent and you're no longer in a facility, but you're working from home, or you're a student now that your primary mode of learning is remote learning or distance learning, we had to adapt and really overcome many of the challenges that we had that were associated with a physical presence in terms of us being in a location to actually get work done. And then again, number of remote workers in terms of how that actually expanded around the world put tremendous amounts of pressure on, again, our peers within the realm of IT, because the IT teams were tasked with responding to this issue and providing a way to enable their employees and their students to have fast and secure and easy access, not only to the applications that they needed to be productive, but also to the data. So essentially, again, within the realm of data security, making sure that I had the ability to leverage the data at home if I were doing a specific role or mission within an organization, but doing so in a very secure and consistently secure fashion. From an AWS perspective, again, this is not really new in terms of how we've evolved and grown up and how we've gone to market. I mean, our primary mission has been to be able to allow and enable employees to be productive regardless of where they are in the world or what their function might be, whether you're a student full-time or part-time, or whether you're an employee or a task worker or a road warrior, or whether you're in a contact center agent. And those contact center agents could be within the realm of customer service, customer support, sales, etc. But being able to make sure that we worked with customers to provide these seamless capabilities that were, again, not only secure, but were highly effective in terms of maintaining a state of productivity. We're going to cover just briefly some cloud desktop applications and content collaboration to give you kind of a flavor of some of the capabilities that we offer and how some of our customers have been able to take advantage of those. From a desktop applications and content collaboration perspective, Workspaces is within the realm of our end user computing portfolio. That is our desktop as a service. And again, this enables you to have think of it as an emulated desktop that you would see when you come into work every day. And you have a specific desktop that you're working with, that would be that exact same experience, albeit in a remote and secure setting. AppStream, the ability to stream and take advantage of and consume a very specific and discrete application. So essentially, I may not need the entire desktop to do my job. I may need just access to one or two specific applications, and this is the ability then for AppStream to deliver that to you. Chime is our unified communications and collaboration capability. And so this, again, would provide and does provide the modalities of collaboration that you would expect. So whether that's business calling, whether that's instant messaging, whether that's chat, voice, video, etc. both in terms of a client experience. So I have a Chime experience on my device that I can consume, but also in the form of an SDK. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. And then Amazon Connect again, which is our contact center as a service. This, again, is something that we have been in market now with for about 3 years, but customers have really gravitated towards that capability because it does provide the ability for agents to be remote and be super productive, just as if they were sitting in a physical contact center. From an AWS perspective, we have conversations with customers and partners around, why AWS for remote work and learning. And I think the primary answer to that is, again, it shouldn't be, a real surprise because it's in alignment with how we go to market just broadly. And that is, from a security perspective, AWS and how we perceive and how we approach security, it's mission one, job one for each and every one of us. I mean, so there is no absence for a focus on security. It's in everything we do. And so that is part of the framework that these category of applications within the productivity family just fall into. So we actually inherit and benefit from that broader security capability and ecosystem that's been set up for all of the AWS services. And similarly, scalability. So we don't really have conversations with customers where we have to worry too much about, hey, I have 100 contact center agents today and I'm now moving to 1,000. That's okay. I mean, we have the ability to scale on demand for our customers, and we've evidenced that, I think, in terms of how we've presented other services and solutions like utility computing with EC2, storage with S3, et cetera. This is just part of that same framework. And then, again, our primary goal in terms of how we approach the market and how we approach our customer obsession and customer services, let's just get started for free. I mean, we have categories of free tier that you can take advantage of. Try the services out, try the capabilities out. Make sure they're a good fit, and then if they are, and when they are, you really only pay for what you use in a consumption model. So again, there's really not a need to think about a per seat or a per employee type licensing permutation. Again, I touched on Workspaces just a little bit. This is our flagship service in terms of providing a desktop as a service for employees, and really, it has a couple of different elements that I think we've received feedback on that are compelling. Number one is it greatly simplifies the delivery of a desktop back to me as a consumer or a knowledge worker or a task worker. So again, there's not a whole lot of what I would consider to be heavy lifting from a user perspective for me to consume this technology and capability. Again, as I said around security, this protocol and the way we deliver capabilities and technologies within the broader EUC ecosystem, and certainly within the desktop as a service Workspaces, is just secure by nature. That's what we do. That's all we know, and that's how we work. It also allows you to quickly scale your desktop deployments, from maybe a department or a division or a category of employees to a broad consumption capability, essentially within hours. And so if you have the framework for consumption in place, the scale up, scale down capability fits directly within your DevOps culture. And so we're not asking you to really invent or even reinvent anything, just take advantage of what you've done already. And then, again, I alluded to this in terms of the model and how we actually go to market. The reduced cost is based upon the fact that it is truly elastic in terms of how we consume this service. And so, again, you may have a need for, 10,000 users today. Tomorrow it may be, 15,000 users, and that's okay. You can just as easily scale down as well. And so it greatly impacts the ability to make these decisions, knowing the predictable financial impact it will have, both in terms of upsizing or upscaling as well as downscaling. Just a brief kind of peek into the inner workings of Amazon and AWS. I mean, we actually consume Workspaces as a service ourselves as employees, and you can see that Andrew, who's one of our internal clients, he looks after client engineering within Amazon, but he actually put together some of the financials associated with his consumption of Workspaces and was able to articulate a savings of $17 million annually for the 25,000 users that he supports that are currently consuming end user computing and specifically Workspaces. So, again, we have similar conversations and stories from our customer base, but this is the goal, right? How do you actually enable employees, keep them super productive, keep them in a safe environment, keep them consuming technology in a way that's seamless and predictable, but also, making sure that we're returning that cost savings back to the organization and back to the enterprise. I mentioned earlier, AppStream, again, part of the end user computing family, and this is really an exciting capability to consume a very specific or discrete application without maybe the need for an entire desktop. So, think about maybe I'm living in an SAP instance, maybe I'm living in, a specific CRM instance. I can actually consume those capabilities as discrete services, if you will, inside of what I do on a day-to-day basis in a remote environment, and then do so using AppStream as a technology. And again, similar framework in terms of the ease of delivery. So the goal is how to deliver desktop applications to any computer anywhere in the world in a way that's very, very secure, consistent, predictable, optimized for performance. And then also, if you think about the IT burden, how do we reduce that so we can centrally manage these applications in a way that just makes sense? So we're not adding another management layer. We're not adding another level of complexity. It's just, hey, it's part of the framework. It's part of my IT organization. It's part of my DevOps culture. And this is just the way I go to market. That also extends into how we integrate AppStream specifically within the realm of your existing IT infrastructure. So again, not asking you to reinvent or invent something. It's just part of the broader go-to-market or self-service capability that you have within your organization. We're taking advantage of that and just feathering this right in. And then again, we have an opportunity to greatly reduce, IT spend by virtue of being able to isolate and deliver specific application capability back down to the end user, keeping them super productive in a way that's very meaningful. And you can see here that Samsung took advantage of this capability and were able to reduce their cost by 20%. And this is, again, in and of itself, it was a great piece of feedback from our customers. But I think with this particular use case, Samsung was also able to, isolate the fact that, hey, from a deployment perspective, we have these heavy use, applications that we're able to deploy, but we did so in a way, again, that was very seamless, limited overhead in terms of IT, and in a way that, customers and consumers internally could consume in a very easy fashion. I mentioned Amazon Chime. That's our unified communications and collaboration capability, and again, something that we internally use within Amazon, and all of us on our day-to-day meetings with customers and partners, and internally we use Chime to facilitate that level of communication and collaboration. As I said, in and of itself, Chime is actually a full fidelity unified communications and collaboration capability or service, and so again, you would have the ability for online meetings. For audio and video conferencing, obviously business chat. And again, the chat capability is both, kind of a single dimension in terms of one-to-one, as well as, group chats, as well as persistent chat, et cetera. And then also business calling. So how to actually take advantage of that as a way to reach out outside of your organization in the event you need to actually, call somebody that's not within your environment, and to do so while kind of living within that same world. I think the other thing that's exciting is customers have also consumed Amazon Chime from an SDK perspective. So if you think about, if I'm going to market and I have maybe a discrete application, or I'm an ISV that I've launched, and I like customers to actually stay within the realm of what I'm doing. So I think about, we announced a partnership with Slack, which is really exciting. And so if you're a Slack user, you live inside of Slack, that's kind of where you work, that's the basis of your collaboration. Now, by consuming the Amazon Chime SDK within the Slack world, I have the ability now to instantiate a voice call, a video call, et cetera, while living within that application. And so that's another really cool way that customers and ISV partners are consuming the capability, and really enabling us to be more productive by singularly focusing and allowing us to stay in a kind of a consistent way, and then escalate our needs for communication right within the world of work that we live in. And again, similar to the services that I spoke about earlier, it is a pay-as-you-go model, both in terms of the SDK side of the house, as well as the full fidelity UC&C side of the house. But the goal here, again, is to make sure that you have the ability to to scale up, scale down, include additional constituents inside of your communications framework, and then again, only pay for what you're using without being bound to maybe counting users or concurrency, et cetera. And here's a really interesting piece of feedback and case study that Deepak was gracious enough to go through with us. And Care Monitor, super interesting organization, and again, in response to the pandemic, they really moved forward aggressively with telehealth, both in terms of the audio and video capabilities of what they were doing. They enabled 7,000 clinics in a very short amount of time. They had 100 participants who supported this particular rollout in terms of their downstream consumers of the technology. And again, their feedback was, hey, it was fast, it was easy, and oh, by the way, it was actually demonstrable evidence of the fact that, hey, even though we may need to be remote for certain things, we can still be productive, we can still be safe, we can still be impactful. The final piece that I'd like to share today is really around Amazon Connect, which is our virtual contact center. And Amazon Connect is the ability to enable contact centers to be, again, highly impactful and productive while working remotely. And the use case that we actually talk about quite a lot with Amazon Connect is the fact that this particular service, although it's been in market now for about 3.5 years, was really born out of necessity to serve our own customer service needs within Amazon retail. So again, we were in a position about 10 years ago where we needed to find a scalable and secure solution which allowed for seamless ways for our customer service agents to fulfill and meet the demands of our customer base in a way that was again scalable and reliable and secure, etc. So we actually developed this capability about 10 years ago, built on the AWS ecosystem of services. It's been running our global customer service organization now for 12 plus years. And about 3.5 years ago, customers had asked us to consider bringing that to market for them to consume as well. And Amazon Connect is a way for contact center agents to be productive, again, from really anywhere in the world, leveraging any type of device where I can gain internet access. And all I need is a USB connected headset, and I'm off to the races as a contact center agent. I think the unique thing about Connect is that it really does allow for organizations to stand up a contact center in really in minutes. And so, again, contact centers historically have been very complex and oftentimes very laborious to not only consume but also to version and keep maintenance, etc. Again, based upon the agility of the cloud, based upon the security of AWS. We've actually introduced a way to stand up a contact center very quickly. And then it's a very user-friendly type experience in that I no longer have a need to involve a heavy professional services contingent or a heavy IT governance contingent, when in fact I have the ability now to kind of put together some of these call flows and things myself as a business user or maybe an IT analyst, and not necessarily as a dev or a contact center developer or architect. It is an open platform, and so many of the complexities associated with contact centers are the fact that you have really multitudes of different systems necessary to provide a good customer experience. And so you may have a CRM system on the front end, you may have a workforce management capability that you kind of triage and schedule employees with, and then the contact center piece in the middle does really all of the hard work. It was important for us that we had an open system with Amazon Connect so we could facilitate the integration and consumption of these kind of ancillary services. Again, because if they're working within an environment, if they're productive and meeting a need within an enterprise, let's not change it. Let's just consume what's there and let's just make it better. And again, when we launched Amazon Connect, we talk about AI and ML quite frequently, and oftentimes probably in a way that may or may not be relevant. But in this sense, we launched Amazon Connect with the AI services built into it. And as an example, for us, it wasn't a separate thing. As I said, the service itself, Amazon Connect, was built on the broader AWS ecosystem. And so essentially, we were able to bring to market Lex, which is our natural language understanding engine, just as part of Amazon Connect. And similarly, Poly, which is our text-to-speech capability, just as part of Amazon Connect, the service. So again, not a separate thing. We're just consuming those within the realm of Amazon Connect. And again, with the goal of making sure that our end customers have the ability to create experiences for their customers that are very highly personalized, they're very predictive in nature, and with a goal on driving expediency in terms of resolving. Just a quick update here in terms of some feedback we received from Direct Interactions, a really, really cool organization based here in the West region in Seattle. It's a business process outsourcing firm, but they actually specialize in a very, very focused recruiting process to bring on board people with disabilities, for example, military spouses, and people that normally may not have an opportunity to to have a role where they have a consistent motion and a consistent contribution. And in doing so, Direct Interactions was able to provide, again, the ability for contact center agents to be very productive, regardless of where they were in the world, whether regardless of what device they were on, and in a way that was, again, consistent and valuable for the end customers that they were serving. John's been very vocal about the fact, and so is Jonas, about the fact that they've saved about $30,000 a month just by virtue of deploying Amazon Connect in a way that, again, serves their end customer needs, allow them to employ a wide variety and diverse and valued set of employees, and then ultimately do so in a way that was fast, expedient, and secure. They are 100% remote, so they do not have a physical location. And it takes about 20 minutes for them to onboard a brand new contact center agent. Once I kind of go through my orientation and training, and bang, I'm ready for action and ready to be productive. Juniper, as an example, was a great use case and customer that consumed multiple capabilities at the same time. And again, their challenge was really around a not-for-profit environment that they have in Western Australia, and they wanted to be able to provide real-time updates, real-time communication, and serve their constituent base in a way that was again not forcing people to hunt for information and potentially seek out information that wasn't accurate. And so Dan was very innovative in terms of the way he consumed these capabilities, and it was really a Chime, Workspaces, and Connect triad, if you will. And Dan was incredibly forward thinking in the way that he actually structured the services to meet the demands of his customers. And he put together this capability, which you can read the case study, but really received a lot of favorable input, not only from the consumers but also from the press and the media, as well as the health organization within Australia. So really, really great, innovative work. We covered off on a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. But what I would encourage you to do is take the next step in terms of evaluating how these capabilities and how these services could and would meet the demands of your enterprise. Again, whether it's in a business setting, whether it's in a corporate environment, whether it's in a scholastic or higher education setting. We're confident that if you take a look at how we can actually enable and create an environment for your employees to work remotely and be productive, for your students to actually learn remotely and be engaged and be productive, and also from your contact center agents to make sure that they have the opportunity and ability to serve and continue to serve their customers in a way that's productive, safe, as well as remote. So in doing so, I would encourage you to, number one, sign up for an AWS account. If you don't have an account yet, it's very easy to do. Number two, take a look at the management console. If you open up the console, you'll see about 170 bits of goodness in there that AWS brings to market. And if you take a look in there, you'll find a category of services and applications that I spoke about today in terms of the productivity application space. And you'll have an opportunity to check out, again, end-user computing within our Workspaces and AppStream, within Chime, both in terms of the UC&C full fidelity client as well as the SDK, and then Amazon Connect, which is our contact center as a service. And again, we have multiple tiers where you can actually take advantage of these on a trial basis at no cost. Try them out, check out the capability, and get some traffic through there and find out for yourselves. But again, the whole goal here was to make sure that you had a little bit of a perspective and maybe a peek into providing capabilities to keep employees safe, to keep employees productive while working in a remote environment, and to also enable organizations to have a continuum of maintaining. I have on-premises people that are coming into work every day. I have remote employees that I need to make sure that we are enabling and keeping safe and productive, and I can slide that scale back and forth as needed. Again, my name's Scott Brown. It's been a pleasure to spend the past about 20 minutes with you. I look forward to anything that may come up as a direct result of this. Happy to help out any way I can, and enjoy the rest of the sessions. Thanks so much.